Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with my first part of my October wrap-up. I will put content warnings and all of the links and people I mentioned in the description box. The first book I finished in October was Empty Smiles by Katherine Arden. This is the fourth and final book in the Small Spaces series. Each of the books is inspired by a different season, and this one is the summer book. And I have been buddy reading this whole series with my friend Katie from A Sea of Tomes, and I really enjoyed this one. I think it was a really satisfying finale. I thought the spookiness was really good, as it pretty much always is. I continue to really love these characters and their friendships. I didn't love at first that we were following one of the main characters kind of like in a different storyline or a different plot line for a while, but I actually was like equally engaged in both of these, so I ended up being won over. And I actually like the way the ending played out. I do agree with other reviewers that it happened way too quickly. I think we should have spent more time on that, but the actual things that happened I liked. Other than that, my only like negative for this book is the way that some of the like adult situation was handled, because I at first was really liking how this book was dealing with that. You know, like a lot of times in middle grade books there's that point where the kids are like, do we need to tell somebody? And I really liked the way this book was handling that, and then I feel like by the end that was just completely like written out, or like that didn't matter by the end. Like I didn't like the way the author kind of backed out of that, so that annoyed me. But overall I really enjoyed this. I gave Empty Smiles 4.5 stars, and I think my ranking of the books, the first one is my favorite, the second one is my second favorite, then this one, and my least favorite was the third book, but even that one I still gave 4 stars. So definitely recommend the series, and I'm very glad I gave it a try after I really didn't like Katherine Arden's other series. Next I finished Queen of Tejano Music, Selena, by Sylvia Lopez, illustrated by Paula Escobar. This is a gorgeously illustrated book that is about the life and career of Selena, who I knew a tiny bit about, but I didn't know very much about her or her work at all. So I loved this. I learned so much. I loved that we got so much good like biographical information, but we also got a sense for Selena's personality a little bit and like the kind of person she was. I believe I heard about this book from Priscilla at Bookie Charm, and I just thought it was beautiful. I definitely want to read more about Selena now, and about her music and kind of like what she did for music. And she just seems like a really incredible person, and I'm very glad that I know a little bit more about her now, and I gave Selena 5 stars. Next, I finally read Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Elston. This is the first book in a middle grade sci fantasy series. Like, it's mostly fantasy, but like the powers that the kids have feel kind of like a cross between magic and science fiction. Like magic and superheroes almost. Our main character is Amari, and her brother goes missing, and everybody thinks that he that he is dead, or like he got mixed up in something bad and that's what happened to him. And Amari knows her brother. She knows he would never do that. She knows that something else has to be going on, and then she finds this like mysterious briefcase that her brother left her, and she finds out that he left her an opportunity to get into this school that he was also a part of, and that is like the magical school, the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And so Amari does go there, and she is trying to use this as an opportunity, not just to, you know, like find out what her powers are and everything, but most importantly to find her brother and to find out what happened to him and to get him back. And so we see her kind of figuring out like how to navigate the school, all of these different like friendships and alliances. Amari didn't grow up knowing about the school, so she's kind of at a disadvantage there, and some people don't treat her well because of that. And also the magical ability she has is apparently illegal, and so she's also kind of shamed and treated badly because of that as well. But we do see her start to make some friends, and I did end up really enjoying this book. I love Amari as a main character. I really like some of the friendships that she forms. I had heard from people that this book talks a lot about like class and privilege, and I really liked that. I like the way this book did that, even in this like fun middle grade story. And I also really enjoyed the like challenges or the trials. That's not something I usually like find super interesting, or I don't usually think of myself as finding that interesting in books, but I really liked those scenes. I really liked the way those were done. I wasn't the biggest fan of some things that happen at the ending. I'm kind of hoping that things go in a different direction in the sequel. I don't know. But overall I did enjoy this, and I gave Amari and the Night Brothers 4 stars. Next I finished Fire in the Blood by W.R. Gingell. This is the second book in the Shards of the Broken Sword series, which is the series of companion novellas that are only very loosely connected, so you can pretty much read them as standalones. So there is a character named Prince Akish who is trying to defeat a dragon and defeat these like magical obstacles in order to rescue this princess in a tower. But kind of the twist on that is that we're actually not following the prince, we're following the prince's servant, whose name is Rafiq, who is kind of like a human dragon sort of combination, who has actually been enslaved by Prince Akish. So Akish sucks. He's a really unpleasant, horrible person, and we're actually following Rafik instead. And they get to the tower and start kind of working their way through these obstacles, and the person that they have to help them is a maid, the princess's serving maid named Keiko. So she's kind of our other main character, and I really enjoyed this. I think, as most people seem to be saying in reviews, I liked the first novella more, but I did still really enjoy this one. I like W.R. Gintel's writing. I like the way she does characters. This is another case where I'm not usually a fan of like obstacle or like challenge plot lines, but these ones kept me pretty engaged the whole time. I love Rafik. He is just like so just endearing, and like he's obviously a very like powerful person and he can be dangerous when he wants to be, but he's mostly a sweetheart and I love him. I also liked Keiko, although she did kind of feel a little bit like one of those characters where like the author was almost trying, this is gonna sound so stupid, but like almost trying too hard to make you like her and to make you think she's like so clever and quirky, you know? Like definitely not over the top, and I still did really enjoy Keiko, but that was just something that I kind of noticed with her. I also found the setting very interesting, and the plot was super interesting, like the mystery of what exactly was going on, because I thought I had figured everything out, and I had not. Like some of it I was right on, but some of it I wasn't, and I really liked seeing how that played out. Also, I don't like shifter romances or anything, and this isn't really a shifter romance, but I still think it's impressive that I enjoyed the dynamic between Keiko and Rafik so much, considering that is not a trope I enjoy at all. And I also thought this book did a really interesting job of talking about like kind of selflessness or sacrifice or like choice, like who has the right to sacrifice something or someone, and I thought that was very interesting. I didn't love the way that like some things at the end that are said about Rafik's enslavement. I didn't like the way that was like talked about or handled, but overall I do think that was handled pretty thoughtfully, and I did enjoy this. And I give Fire in the Blood 4 stars. Next, I finished Forestborn by Shannon Hale. This is the 4th and final book in the Books of Bayern series. I just realized I actually did really well with like finishing and catching up on books. Like Series September was obviously in September, but I think I just kept that momentum going in October, because like I think I finished or caught up with 4 different series. Which I think is pretty impressive, and I continued in a few others. But anyway, this is the 4th and final book in the Books of Bayern series, which are definitely chronological, so I would recommend reading these books in order, but they are also companion books, so we follow a different main character in each one, which I really like. And we are following Rin in this 4th book, and we do kind of know a little bit about her from other books in the series. And basically, Rin is realizing that there is some kind of power she has that scares her, that she thinks is really ugly and horrible, and she has done some messed up things with it, and she's kind of like coming to terms with that throughout the book, and like she doesn't really understand what's going on. She just like, it starts making her feel isolated from her family and the people who love her and everything. And so when she gets the chance to go along with some of the other characters from other books, she jumps on it, and so they are kind of like all traveling together to try, and it's basically like a political conflict situation. They're trying to stop another kingdom from going to war against them. And this was like a really interesting reading experience. By the end, I really enjoyed it. But for a while, I was thinking this was maybe gonna be like a 3 or a 3.5 stars. There were definitely things I liked about it, but there were a lot of things that were kind of holding me back. But by the end, it really pulled everything together for me, and I gave it 4 stars. So I really loved Rin as a main character. I really, really felt for her, and she just hurt my heart so much. Like the way that she was thinking about how she's really good at kind of giving people what they want from her, like so that she, to the point where she doesn't feel like she knows who she is because she's so different with everybody, and that just breaks my heart. And just like seeing her feel like she was too evil and too bad to be around the people who care about her was just heartbreaking. I do actually wish we had spent a little more time on like the positive part of the story after she kind of figured out what was going on and like came to terms with things. That was one of the reasons why I had a hard time liking this book at first, or like really enjoying it at least. But ultimately I do like where that went. I also really love Shannon Hale's writing. I just think it's really lovely and it flows beautifully. And I think her writing like keeps even the really like heavy parts from feeling too heavy. I also absolutely loved the friendship between women in this book. Like basically this like girl squad of like all of the main characters from this series, I love. I loved them being together. That just made me so happy. Sorry Finn, but I didn't care about you at all. And I also feel like the confrontation that Rin kind of has near the end was really satisfying to me, and that's part of just what, like, I just really, really loved the ending. Like, this was one of those books for me where there were things that I liked about it throughout, but what really pulled everything together and really made the story feel like complete, and I could see where it was going and I could really appreciate everything it was doing, was the ending. Like, we had that confrontation with Rin, we had this like really beautiful reunion moment that just like really choked me up. I thought it was lovely, and just like the completion of Rin's character arc and development I found really satisfying. Again, I do think we could have spent more time on certain parts of it rather than others, but I just really, really loved her journey. I love where this book ended. Like, that ending just was lovely. This book also has no romance, so if you're looking for that kind of book, that's something to know, although it is like the fourth in a series, obviously. As far as things that I didn't care for, besides the things I've already mentioned, some parts of the plot were frustrating to me. There was a lot of traveling and a lot of like slow traveling and just like waiting around, and I found that pretty dull. And then also, like I said, I understand why so much of Rin's character arc focused on the like unhappy parts, but for one thing, I think that I would have liked if she figured certain things out quicker, and then also just in terms of the story, I kind of would have liked more time spent on the resolution to some of these things. But overall, I ended up really liking this. Like, I can see why it's a book in the series that a lot of people don't care for, but I ended up really liking it, and as I said, I gave Forsworn 4 stars. Next, I finished The Lightning Dreamer by Margarita Engel. This is a novel in verse. The subtitle is Cuba's Greatest Abolitionist. So this is a novel in verse about Gertrudis Gomez de Avenida, who's nicknamed Tula, who is a real person, and she, as the book says, was Cuba's like greatest abolitionist, or one of them. This is really short. We are pretty much just following Tula as she kind of gets into the abolitionist movement as a young girl, as a young woman, and kind of seeing her start to write and start to realize what her writing can do for the cause. And like I said, I learned a lot from this. Definitely we don't spend a lot of time, at least in my schooling, we didn't spend a lot of time at all on the abolition movement in other countries. Like, we pretty much just learned about in the US and a little bit in England, and that was it. So I really liked seeing like the Cuban context for that. As with the other book I've read from Margarita Engel, I really appreciated all the history here. I really like Margarita Engel's ideas and like the kinds of stories that she tells. I love that she included some real excerpts from Tula's work at the back of the book. I definitely want to learn more about her and read the novel that this book talks about. And I also thought that some of the lines or some of the poems were really beautiful in this. I didn't give this one quite as high a rating though as the other book I've read from this author, and that was because, like, just for my taste, I feel like the verse style wasn't my favorite, which is kind of how I felt about her other book as well. Like, there were, like I was saying, some standout lines and poems that were absolutely beautiful, that were so powerful and so well done, but then there was kind of a lot that felt a little bland in comparison. And there were also some sections of this that felt pretty repetitive, which, considering this is a really short book, you know, that's not great either. And then I also would have liked more from the characterization. Again, this is a short book, so I understand that it can't be super detailed, but I just feel like I love the ideas of this book, but in addition to the ideas, I would have liked to see some emphasis on like the people in the story as well and getting to know them. But I did give The Lightning Dreamer 3.75 stars, and it was actually interesting because I read this, and even though I had some issues with it, I was thinking, like, I feel like this would be a really great book for people who haven't read novels in verse before, or who are like nervous about them, maybe people who don't like poetry and who are kind of, you know, they don't want to try this. And I actually had like recommended this book for that. And actually, like, all the people who read it, almost all of them hadn't read a novel in verse before, and I was correct. They all really enjoyed it and they all really loved the writing. So this might also just be like a personal taste thing, you know, like depending on what you like in your verse style, this might work for you or might not. But even with that, there were lots of things I enjoyed about this book, so like I said, I gave The Lightning Dreamer 3.75 stars. And then finally, the last book I'm going to talk about today is The Legend of Skeleton Man by Joseph Bruchac. This is a 2-book collection, so it is, let's see, what are they? Skeleton Man and The Return of Skeleton Man. So this is a bind-up of 2 very short, like, novellas or stories. And this is a spooky middle grade book, as you can probably tell from the title. And it is inspired by Mohawk, like, folklore or storytelling. And we're following our main character, Molly. And one day her parents don't come home, and then this man shows up claiming custody of her, saying that, like, he's a distant relative and he's there to take care of her. And all the adults just go along with it. They're like, you know, of course, yes, go ahead and take care of her. And Molly's the only one who's like, this something isn't right here, I don't trust him, and she gradually starts realizing that he might actually be Skeleton Man, who is a figure from Mohawk folklore, and that she could be in great danger. So she's trying to protect herself and defeat him and figure out what happened to her parents and if she can rescue them. And I really liked these overall. I thought the atmosphere and the spooky elements were great. My friend Cozy Reader Kelly actually read this before me, and she was talking about how like one of the really spooky parts wasn't even like the creepiness, the atmospheric parts, so much as like the fact that you have this kid who is in danger and is telling adults they are in danger and nobody's believing them, you know, or almost nobody. And I definitely think that was an element of how creepy this book was as well. I also love the way that Joseph Bruchac like used Mohawk folklore to like to tell this story, and I really love that Molly's knowledge about her Native American heritage is what made her so strong and is what like what helped her, you know, succeed at things. I really liked that. I do think that the second story in the collection felt pretty unnecessary. I didn't like that one as much, but I did really enjoy the first one. And my only other kind of issue is, once again, I would have liked more from the characterization. I do understand that like this book is more about like the spookiness and the atmosphere and like the folklore elements, but I still would have liked to get to know Molly just a little bit better, because she didn't feel like a super developed character, even though of course I was still invested in her and I did care about her. But anyway, I really enjoyed this, and I gave The Legend of Skeleton Man 4 stars. Okay everybody, so those were all of the books I'm going to talk about today. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them, or if you're going to pick them up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!